G'day and welcome back. Before we look at today's project, I'll just show you my new workstation or workbench. It's a much easier layout and big equipment that I've had in the cupboard and have to get it out if I want to use it. It's all in front of me now. I've also fitted a 120 volt outlet there for American radios. So I'm hoping this will work a bit better for me. Onto the radio. Today's project is going to be another one of these Philips RF8 radiograms. I seem to have gained a bit of a reputation as to know what I'm doing with these, and that's maybe a false reputation. I have done a few. I'm certainly not an expert. I was contacted last week by a gentleman in Victoria, and he said he's got this radiogram. He'd really like to get it working properly. He's made a list of issues with it, so we can go through and just do a troubleshooting type video. I won't go into all the setting up and tuning and whatever else. All we want to do is make it work. So he's shipped it up. He's taken all the valves out there in a box over on the side here. He also fitted some new filter capacitors, but they're loose. They're not sort of fitted properly, so I'll have to stabilize them. Here's the bottom of the two capacitors. And if I wobble it from the bottom, you can see it's just hanging on by the neutral tab here. That's the only thing holding it onto the chassis. This is the lead from the transformer onto the on-off switch, and somebody's chopped it off. And here's the original contacts where they've just cut the lead off. There's another set of contacts down the bottom here, and I can connect to those. They'll still be okay. So I need to fix that and the capacitors before I start on the radio. What I'll do now is glue these in. I'll use some JB Weld, and it can set overnight, and then in the morning they should be quite solid. So I'll do that, and I'll come back in the morning and I'll try and reconnect that power switch. The adhesive's dried on the capacitors, and I was able to solder the little neutral tab here onto the chassis itself, so that's much more stable. So even if the adhesive ever gave way, they would be able to hold it in position. I've already soldered in the ground wires for the chassis, so now I can connect all the wires onto the capacitor. That's the bottom of the rectifier, so this is coming out of the rectifier, so that goes there. That's the first filter capacitor, and then a resistor goes from there to over here. These wires go on there, and then another resistor over to here, a third resistor there. The yellow one goes here, and this tan colored one goes here. I've connected the 3 red wires and 2 of the resistors, so I can solder those in, and then I'll finish off on the next capacitor along. I've connected all the other wires. I'll solder these in. These components need to be mounted fairly flat to the chassis. I'll shrink this tubing, and that'll be the power supply completed. I'll get this switch reinstated again, but I'll take this cover off so I can get to it. The screws are out. I'll see if I can get it out. There it is. It's more a shield than a cover. I shouldn't have said cover. Alright, that's better. So I'll test these contacts here. Bit of a clean so I can get a good contact on it. Alright, I've connected the multimeter. Now this should be... Oh, hey, that's not right. That's only a 3-position switch, and it just keeps going. Well, that's off. That's fully counterclockwise. That's off. So that'll be radio there, and there's no continuity. Just wobble them around a bit. So even that bottom switch isn't working. Why is it going all the way? The stop's broken, and it looks like the switch is broken. Alright, I'll have to take the switch out. I'll undo the nut holding that switch in and see if I can work something out. I do have a spare switch assembly, so it might be okay. I've been looking at this switch. I don't know where the stop is supposed to be to stop it going around. It only should have 3 selections, and that'll be radio, and that'll be phono, and there's the little switch there. It looks like I can take this apart, so I can actually remove that switch off the end there, and we'll have a look at that. So just 2 screws, I think. Whoops, there's bits falling out. Where'd that come? Oh, I see, there's the switch unit, and that seems to be working. Well, it doesn't make contact, but it actually does toggle. So I don't think that's where the stop is. The shaft here has a little detent plate mounted on it, and the bearing in there will give you the detents. Yeah. The only thing I can see is that little indent in there, and I bet that's supposed to hit something that's flattened off. There is actually, oh, you can see it in there. There's a little raised bit that's supposed to hit this detent. I'll see if I can get this ring off here, and that will let me pull it completely apart. There's a wire retainer in there, and I managed to get it out, I think. There we go. So this whole thing should come apart like that. These are the two little lumps that's supposed to hit. So maybe the whole thing's just a bit loose. You can see where it's been running up over it instead of stopping on it. If I can get the switch working, I'll make these a little bit more prominent, and then they should strike each other again. But I'm not sure about the switch yet. That comes apart. It has little tabs bent over there, and that'll pull the whole thing apart. Okay. Here's a little over center mechanism. That's working fine. There's the contacts under there. There's a rivet holding all this together, so I don't know that I can go any further than this. I have soaked it in deoxit. I'm going to put the meter on the auxiliary contacts that weren't used and see if they will work, and already it's closed, so the switch is now working. Let's try the original ones. These are the ones that were disconnected because they'd failed. Well, it's zero already, so they're now working. Perfect. So deoxit has repaired that. I couldn't get in there because this is riveted, so that's good. On the off chance that I get all this switch gear back together, I'll wire this with the two contacts together, and I think that'll be pretty reliable if I do that. The next thing is this detenting bit, and I think I can just, push those out a little bit further so they make better contact, and that will fix that problem, and I can put it all back together. I reworked those little interference marks there. I've put the ball back in. I'll just temporarily put that there, and I'll put the ring around it, and we'll see if it's going to work. It does. That's working very, very nicely. So all I have to do now is reassemble it and put it back on the radio. I've got it all back together. It went together really easily, just built up one layer at a time, put the nut on the end, and it was easy. I've put my multimeter on the contacts there for the switch, and we'll turn it on. That's radio, zero resistance, and that's phono. Fantastic. Works beautifully. There you go. So I didn't have to use my spare switch, and that's what I was trying to do. I don't want to just throw parts at things, that they're limited supply these days. So now I can connect the switch up. I'll do that. I'll come back and we'll give it a try, see what's wrong with it. I've installed the power wires to the switch, and I'll check the voltages. I need to put in the rectifier valve. I'll do that, and I'll put some power on. Rectifier's in. I'll put some power on. It's on dim bulb. I haven't turned it on at the switch yet, so I'll test how the switch works, or if it works. That's working. Looks alright. It's not pulling a whole lot of power. I'll test the voltages. They'll all be the same because there's no current draw. Yeah. Anyway, all the voltages are there. So that was not much of a test, was it? Anyway, I'll turn it over. I'll put the valves in, and we'll see if it works. I'm all set up to put the power on, but before I do, I'll read through what the owner has sent me as the list of faults. And he says the radio doesn't work, basically. The pots are scratchy. You can't work out the mode selector switch. Well, we sorted that out yesterday. Yeah, so that'll be okay. There's a slight hum in the background that increases if the unit is left on for long periods. I'll have to look at that. The unit also puts out a lot of heat. That's normal. The light in the record player area stopped working. Well, that's in the cabinet itself. So there's a switch in the cabinet that gets actuated by the mechanism. The bass sound has declined over the past couple of years, and I noticed that taking out the chassis, the connection on a capacitor on the base pod is broken. I saw that. I haven't put it back. We'll see what happens with it left off. He replaced the electrolytic capacitors, but he didn't think he did a good job on the solder, and it wasn't. The solders were cold. On at least 2 occasions, been a loud pop or bang come from the unit. That might be the output valves, they do that. The power cable is damaged, might need to be replaced. Worth mentioning, the previous owner may have installed a separate power switch at the back. Well, okay, well, we've sorted that too. The original power switch is back in the unit. So let's put some power on. I've got all the valves in, so I'll put some power on. It's on dim bulb. I'll see what happens. I haven't turned it on. I want to test the switch. I'll look at the watts, and there it goes. I said yesterday radio was the first stop. It isn't. It's phono is the first stop. Oh, there's a hum. Where are we? Volume. Balance. They're all neutral. Let's see if we can get a radio station. Oh, there's one.
Hello, friend. Thank you. I feel like I need to give you another.
Not very loud. That's full volume. It's not working very well.
Because you and I used to talk every day, multiple times during the day when I was on mornings, and now you don't talk to me.
I've known for a long time. I remember you producing in when I traffic.
Well, when did you first start doing traffic?
Well, it's been pretty good with maths.
Yeah, that's the only. Oh, that's the only station. Yeah, it's scratchy pot, as he said. And there's another station there. Should be one here. No. So this one up here.
Radio on Sydney. All we used to split shoes, and I remember finishing up on the.
So it is working, just not working very well. I'll turn it up again.
We've got listeners all over Queensland some of whom will hear you regularly, some of whom will hear you on special occasions, public holidays and whatnot.
There's quite a bit of hum in the background there, although it feels like it's a grounding problem. It's still on dim bulb, of course, I forgot about that. Let's put it on full power. I'll try that.
Wow.
Okay.
It's better. It's not much better. I'll put it on phono just to stop the radio. I have a phone here with some music on it. I'll play that. And around the back here are some sockets, and this one here is to put microphones and whatever else in there. So if I put that in, I think it's that one. There it is. I think it's that one. I'll turn it up. So the amplifier is working, there's no problem there. I'll put it back on radio. Wobble the valve, there's no noise there. What about these ones? Oh, that one's a bit noisy. Balance. Both valves are working. Maybe I'll change these two valves, see if that sorts anything out. Oh, it doesn't work at all. Oh, that's interesting. Hang on, I'll replace one of those. Now replace the 6A and 7, that hasn't made any difference. So I'll try the 6 and 8. Now that's the original valve there. Okay.
There's a lot of suspense there, folks.
So my replacement 6 and 8 doesn't work as well as the original. I'm pretty sure the amp's okay because when I plugged in here the music was strong. So that uses that valve, or these ones over here as well. The receiver isn't working so well, and that uses this board here. So I'll flip it over and we'll check the voltages on these valves. This is the RF board. There's a dotted line to show the board. It's called an RF board. That is the 6AN7. That's the mixer. That's a 6N8, and that's a IF amp and detector. I know the oscillator is working because we were able to tune in a few stations, so the oscillator is working. I'll check the voltages here. There's the screen 55, there's the plate 210, that's the 6AN7, 6N8 210, the same, and the screen is that one there, number 1 of course, and of course that's the same, it'll be 55. Both of them are getting warm, so I guess the filament voltage is there. I'll put some power on again. Here's the bottom of the 6AN7, there's the gap between the pins, so this should be pin 1. And we have got 50 volts. And according to this we should have 55. So pin 7 should be 210. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that one there. Go over there. And we got 63 volts. Okay. Now the next one, as I said, what's that? Pin 6 should be 210. Here's the bottom of the valve. It's pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And, oh, that's 200. Oh, how does that work? So that's a bit odd. We've got voltage there, around there, and where's it going? Oh, okay, around there, down there, through the coil, onto pin 7, and that's not 210. Let's check it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ha! I was on the wrong one. So that's okay. I better go back and check the screen on the 6N8. That's pin 1, and we've got 49. So 49's all right. The voltages are all good. I'll check the filament voltages. It should be pins 4 and 5, and they should be 6.3 roughly. 6.2. That's 4 and 5 on this valve here. Yeah, 6.2. So the voltages are all there. I think we're safe to say these two valves are working. Maybe just see what these IFs are doing. I can feed a signal in the grid of that 6AN7, and I can also feed it into here, which is the grid of the 6N8. If I set the generator to the IF frequency of 455, it'll ignore the local oscillator and it'll just pass through. So I'll do that. I'll turn on the Swartz. I'll put it in at the mixer, and it was pin 2. There it is. Clear as a bell. I have my shop antenna connected to the external aerial here, and it comes down here and then through this permeability tuning coil and onto the grid. When I touched the signal from my signal generator to 4, it went through. I wonder what would happen if I put the signal in at this end of the coil at number 3. Here's the bottom of the permeability tuning inductor, and we were putting it in pin 4, and it's pin 3. So it goes in 3, comes out 4. So hang on. There's the little cutout, which is that one there. So that is pin 4, and that is pin 3. So if I induce the signal into that, it's not there. It's on coming out of 4. I've put my multimeter on ohms. I'll just check this coil for continuity. I've taken power off the radio. Uh-oh, it's open. This is the oscillator, or local oscillator coil, and yeah, that's got continuity. Looks like I'm taking that out. I'll unsolder these, and that may reconnect the broken wire or whatever's happening inside. I'll try it again. No, it's not going to work, but yeah, no, definitely open. I'll take this out and see what we can find inside. Here's the tuner there. It's just got the 4 screws to undo. I've put some tape on this pulley here to hold the string. It's not too hard to put back together if it all falls apart. The pulley's been pushed onto the shaft there. I don't think I can get it off till I get the tuner away from this edge here. I'll try and push that pulley away. Boing. There's a spring there, but I can't see how that's going to let the whole thing come out. I'll be able to lift that up. Oh, okay. Unless I can find a wire that's broken right here, I've got no hope. So let me have a look. I'll put my magnifying glasses on so I can see. Here's a close-up of the coil base there. I put this tweezer end in here. Look, the wire's not in the hole anymore. It was in the hole, I've pushed it out a bit, but it just came away. So I should be able to reconnect that and we might be able to save this tuner. I've mounted it upside down in the vise. This is the pin that has the failed wire on it. So I'll try and remove any solder from inside. It's a hollow pin. I think that's got it. I want to get a bit of this link wire inside. Let's poke it through. There we go. I'll just trim that. There's the wire there. It still has some solder on the end, so that's good. I'll just try and clean a little bit more of the enamel off. I don't want to break it. I'm not sure how successful this is going to be. There's my bit of wire I put through. I bent it out of the way for a minute. So if I can't even see it. I've managed to wrap that wire around. I'll see if it'll take solder. So let's see what happens. It's on there. I'm not sure if it's soldered on or glued on with the flux. No, I think it's on there. That looks good actually. I'll push this little bit of wire back, oops, like that, and we'll see if it's got continuity. There's the two pins. There's the bit of wire for the repair sticking out. Let's see what we've got. 15 ohm. Beautiful. I'll trim all that up. I'll refit it, but boy, you can be lucky sometimes, can't you? I'll put it all back together. The string stayed on the pulley, so I just put it back on and connected it up. So we're on radio. Turn it up a bit. Oh, there it goes. Tuning. Oh yeah, that's going to work.
I just wonder whether or not we have that class of reprobate these days to bring on the rolling R's and the Shakespearean tone and
another one here.
20.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, you heard it here first. Righto, it's time now for Beat's Best Bet.
Amazing. That was so lucky to find that and to be able to fix it. I think I'll go and put a bet on Lucky Lady in race 5. I've done well today. It's working now, but there's still some items I need to address. I'll come back and we'll address those. I said earlier there was a hum and I think it was a grounding issue. I've refitted this little shield that was near the power switch and it's fixed it. It's not so much there's no bass. The owner said the bass seems to have disappeared over the years. So we'll have a look at this board here. There's a couple of things here that can affect the bass. And if we have a look here, there's 4 cathode bypass capacitors. And if they go out of spec, it'll affect the output of the valve. This is the 6GW8 output valve. There's 2 sections in the valve, but they're all in the one envelope. And here's our little electrolytic capacitors here. One there and one there. This one's 64 microfarad. This one is 10 microfarad. Now I watched an Uncle Doug video years ago. Uncle Doug is a channel, YouTube channel. He does guitar amps mostly, but he is very, very good as an instructor. He explained that the cathode is producing electron flow. It's going to the plate. The grid suppresses it. Now whether the signal is high or low, the grid always is suppressing some of the electron flow. He said that this builds up a negative feedback between the grid and the cathode, and that affects the gain of the valve, the output. The solution for that was to put a bypass cap around the cathode resistor. So that's it there. He also said the value of this capacitor will affect the tone. So too small a capacitor tends to reduce the bass and highlight the upper frequencies, and then you go larger and larger to improve the bass up to a point where it makes no difference. So what I think I'll do is I'll remove one of these capacitors, we'll measure it, see what its capacitance is now, and maybe sub in some other capacitors and see what the effect is on the oscilloscope. The other thing is these resistors here. These resistors supply the plate of the triode in the 6GW8. I'll just point it out on the schematic. There's the triode section of this 6GW8, and there it is there, 220k. These invariably either go open or go high, and it stops that channel from working. So I'll test it and we'll see what we get. We're looking for 220, 273, that's not so bad I guess. And this one's 224, so that's pretty close actually. They're not so bad. I will replace those. I always change those, and that seems to be the case anytime these 6GW8s are used. I've removed that blue capacitor from there. I've connected it to my capacitance tester. I'll turn it on. It's supposed to be 64 microfarad and it's coming up at 5.2, so that's no longer a capacitor. I've set my signal generator to 600 kilohertz. I've got a modulated signal of 400 hertz going in, and I've turned the speaker off so we don't have to listen to the tone. I've also soldered in 2 wires where the capacitor used to go. A little hard to see. I've put some red paint on there, and I have the output up on the scope. What I'll do is put the old capacitor across the 2 wires. We'll see what effect it has. It's had a minimal effect, but it has affected it. This is the one I'm going to fit. We'll see what that does. And you can see that's had a pretty major effect. Now, because that original capacitor read about 5 microfarad, I've got a 4.7 there, and see what that does. Yeah, so that's about the same. So it is around about 4.7 microfarad for this one. I found that interesting. I wasn't aware that that bypass capacitor would have so much effect on the gain of the valve. And because that had dropped so low, that capacitor, we would have lost some bass there. So we might recover some of the bass that's been lost. So I'll change the rest of those capacitors. I'll also check the resistors that are adjacent or in parallel to the capacitors. So leave it with me. I'll change all this stuff. I'll come back. I spent a few hours last night replacing the capacitors. So these 4 here have been done. The 2 plate supply resistors for the triode in this 6GW8, they've been replaced. I went around the board and tested all the resistors, and I've replaced some of those as well. These 2 capacitors here are the bypass capacitors for the cathode on this 12AX7. I pulled those out and tested them. They were fine. This is the cathode bypass resistor. They were a little bit out, so I replaced both of them. Before I power it up, I'll flip it over and have a look at something under the chassis. This is the potentiometer for the base control. There's a little capacitor here's come off. So I'll solder that back on. I'll turn it over and we can test it. Let's put some power on. I'll put it on dim bulb. I don't really need to. I didn't touch anything that might cause a problem. Yeah, the bulb's working all right. I'll get the full power. There it comes.
How it can have so many different meanings associated with it, all at once, seemingly. So,
great. And as we spoke about previously, you know what Jared's like. He's a
Great idea that would be.
Yeah. Now, what happened to the? No, this is a question.
The Argentine ants.
Yeah. What happened there?
It failed. I think we've still got Argentine ants.
Oh, okay.
And they just live in our community, and you've got to deal with them.
Still sounds a bit high pitched actually.
Robust, yeah, and able to travel, so they're a much greater threat to the Argentine ant. But it's not a bad idea. I just hope it wouldn't encourage people to spread Argentine ants, because knowing that the kids who find the nests.
Yeah, so it's certainly improved the gain on it. It's much louder than it was. That's only
Nonsense all the time.
maybe
So,
not even a third up, and before it was probably about halfway up before it got to that volume. I'll just try it again and I'll play with the bass and treble.
No, I saw an article in the paper.
Either there are at least 360 million pigs in Australia at the moment. These are feral pigs that are doing damage. There are 100 million camels doing likewise. It's out of control.
Yeah, can I relay a story?
We've got to get the army involved. We've got to get the army involved.
How about a system of kids going down to the post office, getting a licence to shoot pigs,
Yes.
and getting a reward of, I don't know, $5.
That's Roy and HG, a couple of sports commentator comedians. Anyway, disregard what they're talking about. The bass and treble works all right. I need to put it in a cabinet to do a real test. I happen to have a cabinet here. Let's go and have a look at that. Here's my Philips RF8. It's in pretty poor condition. It was given to me. I'll probably do a video on it one day, but at this stage I'm just using it as a test bed. I've mounted the chassis in the cabinet, so I'll put it on radio. I don't think the radio will work. Just let it warm up. Right, there it is.
In our collections of newspaper clippings from the 1974 planes.
It's not going to work. It hasn't really got an antenna on it. I'll put it on phono. Alright, let's have a look at the record player. I have a record in there. There we go. Now this record player hasn't been serviced, so it doesn't really work all that well. We'll try that. This is Dr. Zhivago. I'll have to chop the music so that I don't get a copyright hit. The speed's not quite right there. Try down here. There's some drums down here somewhere. There's a lot of bass there, but the top end seems a bit shrill. Yeah, it's just a bit shrill. There's something else I can do. I'll flip the radio down and we can have a look in the back. There's a couple of capacitors there. There's 3 speakers in the bottom of the cabinet. There's a woofer, and I guess a mid-range and a tweeter. And in the middle, there's some capacitors. This is what they're using for the crossover, just 2 capacitors. I think they're 10 microfarad. I'll take them out and we'll just measure them. I'm going to change them anyway. Here they are, 10 microfarad, 12 volt. So we'll test it. I'll test this one first. I've got that on 20. Ooh, it's bigger than 20. So 42 microfarad. See what this one is. That's not quite as bad, but it's no good. 27. Now, I think the effect of that will be that it will allow more of the, the lower down sound frequency to get up into the mid-range and the tweeter. So that's supposed to be 10. It's coming up at 12. I have 4 of these to fit to each side. I'll solder them in and we'll see what effect that has on the tone. I've put the capacitors in. I'll give it a try. I've got the 2 tone controls set to neutral, so they're not changing the tone at all. Sounds all right. I'll put it down here. There was a little bit of bass down here somewhere. Maybe about there somewhere. There it is. Right on. There's plenty of bass. There's a bit of bass there. Plenty of bass. Plenty of bass. I've got to turn that down. I'll get copyrighted. The tone controls are in neutral, so you could adjust the tone a little bit if you wanted to. But I think it sounds pretty good now. At this stage, I'm pretty happy with how it sounds. I'll run some records through tonight. I've got some work to do. I'll take the chassis out in the morning and just put it on the bench and we'll move on. I have the chassis back on my workbench, and as I said last night, I ran lots of records through, and actually the next day as well. And what I found was that the sound was just not quite good enough. I was using this cartridge for the test, and I'd bought this a couple of years ago, and it never worked properly. It was mono for one. It's supposed to be stereo, but it only ever worked in mono. I pulled it apart and sort of moved things around a little bit and got it to work in stereo where it's supposed to. But I found that I didn't like the sound, so I went and got one of the original Philips cartridge with the white top on it, and that sounded good. It sounded really good. So I'm not happy with this cartridge. I looked last night on the internet to buy another one, but I don't want to buy another one of these because I'll just end up in the same position. What I did find was a YouTube video of a guy that stripped out the insides of one of these and refitted it with a new cartridge. This is what he fitted, and he managed to fit it in the head. I didn't even consider it would fit in there, but it did, and he was able to machine out the center of the original plastic piece here, remove the innards and glue this in place. If I take the top off, there it is there, and it's just got a bit of adhesive either side there. This has all been hollowed out, and that fits in there. It's quite neat. The profile is exactly the same as the original. you know, the needle on the end there, if you want to take it out. That'll just come out. You buy a new one and put it in. It sounds much better than this one here, and it's probably equivalent to the original Philips one, which is, I've got a new old stock one which works quite well. I saved myself about $80 or $90 for one of these things, which this is no good. I could strip this out and put another cartridge in there, but I did a few more tests on the record player with this cartridge in, and it's really nice.
I'm mad about the boy.
This is Diana Washington. She sounds amazing on these radiograms, and now with this new stylus, sounds really good. Very, very nice.
I'm so ashamed of it, but must admit.
A bit of Glenn Miller, good range too, nice bass, nice top end, sounds good. So I'm very happy with this modification, and I'll leave a link in the description to the video that I saw. The record player has a light inside, and the light comes on when you operate this mechanism. And there's the light right at the back. If I turn the set on, that light should come on. In the back up the top there, you can see the mechanism that operates as you open and shut the door. And that's operating this switch, which is right up the front of the set. I'll put a clip lead across the contacts there, and we'll see if the light comes on. And it does, so that switch is dirty. I need to get in here and clean the switch contacts. So I'll do that, and I'll see if that works. I cleaned the contacts with a bit of Scotch-Brite and some Deoxit. Let's see if it works. Very nice. So that'll sort that out for the owner, and when he gets his radio back, he'll have the light working again. I did notice during testing that it's scratchy in the pots. I've got the signal generator on, and we've got a tone there, so I haven't tuned it in. And there it is. I think they've improved while I've been playing with this. Let's turn it up a bit more. There's a bit there. Can't. There's a little bit in that. You can hear that one. That one's got some as well. I'll just spray with a bit of fader. That should sort them out. I'll use some Deoxit fader. It's specially designed for this. This is the back of the volume pot. I'll put a tiny bit in and just rotate it through. Don't put too much in. I'll do the same for the rest of the pots, and we'll turn it over and see if that's fixed it. They've all been cleaned. It's warmed up, I think. There it is. So, yeah, absolutely silent now. Well, scratching wise anyway. Yeah, that's addressed all the issues the owner was concerned about. There's a dial lamp out there that needs to be replaced. I was going to clean this glass as well. I might even change the dial string. They do tend to snap after about 60 odd years, so I might change that too. To remove the dial glass, it's just the 4 screws here. Take them out and the whole thing comes out. We'll see why that lamp's not working. I assume it just needs a new globe. The glass is off and it's had bugs living in there, so I'll clean all that up. There's the dodgy globe. It's got Philips written on it, so probably the original globe, I think. Yikes, it's tight. So I've got a replacement here. There it goes. I'll change the other one as well so they have equal brightness and longevity. I've cleaned up the dial glass, and I cleaned this up and gave it a bit of a polish. It's come up beautiful. I will change the string. It's a really easy one to do. A couple of loops around there, straight through here. It's a very easy one to do. So I release the old one. And I'll just mark this, or keep that. I'll mark that on the new string so I know where to start. I've cut some string to length. I'll just tape one end of it to the chassis. And this goes under here. I wasn't going to show doing the dial string, but I thought maybe somebody will get something from it. It goes up here and around under there. There we go. And it goes through the center there. There's a little red mark there that goes through that loop there, so Need to make it a bit longer. Alright, I've got it through there. I'll just line it up. I'll tape that on there. And I'll put a bit of tape over this top bit as well. Now that's got to come out there, I think. And then around there. Once again, bit of tape there. And around that pulley, and there we are. I'll put some tape up here as well. Alright, spring in there, through the other end. I've got to pick up that pulley there. There we are. So a bit of stretch on the spring. I'll put some tape around the string there and we can test it. Or we can test the pulley system. I have to take the bits of tape off. I'll put the knob back on here and then I can test it. So it should go stop about here somewhere. There it is. And hopefully it won't run into the end there. It should be okay. Yeah. Alright, so all I need to do now is put a bit of tension on, tie the knot off there, and that'll be done. I cleaned the glass and put it back in, and it looks really nice against the black there. You can see through it now. You couldn't see through before. I need to line up this pointer, and the idea is to wind the tuner down till it bottoms, and the pointer should line up with that line. So I'll just move that along a bit. That's pretty good. I have the signal generator set to 525 kilohertz, and that should line up, and we should have the tone which I can just hear. Yeah, there it is. So the next thing to do is to go up to 1500, which is 3AK up here, and make sure we get the signal there. And there's 3AK there, so if I line that up there, that should be 1500. Well, 3AK is 1500. I've got the signal generator on 1500, turn the volume up, and there's the signal. Close enough. Yeah, okay, I don't need to do anything, that's perfect. I think this is done. There's not much else needs to be done. I've addressed all the problems the owner was having with it. It's working really nicely now. It plays the records well, particularly with that new cartridge in it. I'm confident to send this back to the owner now, and I think he'll have a good run from it. I'll just turn it up. We are on a station there.
Don't you when it comes to insurance?
Well, you do, because it's not so much of a strange law, but an insurance requirement where if you...
So 13 of the 14 burgers that scored now is...
So it's night time, it's picking up stations I don't normally get.
Learning as an adult.
Yeah, so
90,000 a year. Played on the U-tab there at 250 M1.
my Sharona. So I'm happy to send this back. I tried to do just troubleshooting. I got a little off track at the end there, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I always learn something. And I hope you can join me next time for my next radio adventure.